that's when I realized it was important for me that I didn't just want to work to work. I wanted to work so I could also live. And, so that's like a huge principle in my life too. It's like, you have to live your life by doing things that you love, and exploring, and adventure is one of those values that I really hold. And so traveling really feeds through that value, even if it's going, domestic travel within the US.
Welcome to the Venture-Ette podcast, where women from all over the world share their stories of travel, moving abroad, and creating a new life for themselves, hoping to inspire you to live out your dreams by showing you how other women did it. I'm your host, Venture-Ette, Ashley. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Venture-Ette podcast. I'm Ashley, and I have to say, it's really funny how social media works. Not only does it allow you to connect with new people, but it can also allow you to connect with people from your past, which is exactly what happened with today's guest. She is the host of Rated V Food, which is a YouTube channel that showcases the best vegan spots around the world. And if you're a foodie, it's a show that I highly recommend. But it really took her time to really pursue her love of food and travel. We actually both met way back at Oregon State. She was studying merchandising management just like me, and she was in the pursuit of pursuing a career in fashion, which she later accomplished working corporate at Nordstrom. But over the years, she was constantly traveling, using her PTO to travel as much as she could. And later she realized that she really just wanted a big change in her life and wanted to make it more permanent. So she left her job and moved to Valencia, Spain. And when she made this move, she was already a vegan, and she has just been pursuing travel and showing people where you can find the best vegan food spots. And I'm so excited to have her on the show to talk more about how she transitioned into this life and how it really is being vegan abroad. So I'm so pleased to welcome Eunice.
Hello.
Hi, Eunice. I'm so happy that we've reconnected, which I honestly want to dive into a little bit as to how we've just kind of reconnected over the years, because it's been so long, which is crazy.
Yes, it was really funny too, because when I was stumbling upon, I'm like, oh my gosh, this girl has a bunch of cool pictures of food in Portland. And like, I was looking at your stories of like La Perlita that you had just gone to. And then I looked at your profile and I was like, wait a minute, I know this girl. I was like, we were in the fashion show together for 2 years.
Yeah, which was like my freshman and sophomore year. But I actually found you first because I follow. So for those people that don't know, I do have my personal travel Venture-Ette account, but then I have my food account, which is Vegan Ventures. And so I was following this restaurant, Miami Nice, here in Portland, and they shared your YouTube video that you did with them. And so when I watched it, I was like, wait, I know this girl, but it took me a second to realize why. I was like, wait, I do know her, but where? And then I realized, oh, it's you. And so then I started creeping on your page. I was like, oh my gosh, because like you said, we both studied fashion. We were in fashion shows, and now we've become like vegan foodies.
I know, / travel addicts.
Yeah. So I followed you first. And then it wasn't until I think like a few days later, that's when you found my page. Mm-hmm. And then you were like, commenting on my stories and then DMing me being like, how crazy is it? That's been forever since we did like fashion shows. So yeah, so funny how like Instagram has brought us back together, and now, we're here chatting. So just so funny.
I know, it's amazing. So many amazing things can happen through Instagram.
Really though. But I also want to talk a little bit about your like transition into like moving abroad, because you, like I said earlier, you pursued that career in fashion, mm-hmm. and you worked at Nordstrom for several mm-hmm. years. And so you said that you would take your PTO and use that to travel as much as you could. What was it about travel at that time that you just really enjoyed, that you felt like you constantly had to get out and do it?
So when I was in university, I never got to do those study abroad programs, even though I really wanted to. And I had told myself, because I was like, okay, Eunice, if you graduate, you have to make a commitment to yourself that you're going to travel, right? And so my first travel experience, international travel, was Japan. And I was just, to me, the thing that got me addicted to traveling was putting yourself in a completely different culture and, something that you're completely not used to, and learning about how other people live their life. Like, because, you grow up in this bubble thinking of something that's like, quote unquote, normal. And then you go somewhere else and there's like, no, this is what we consider normal. And it's just, to me, that was very exhilarating. Just learning the way people live through food, through, transportation, through everything. And that's what I couldn't get enough of it. Once I was like, oh my gosh, okay, I came back from Japan. I was like, where do I go next? And I kept every year, I was like, okay, I just need to save up all my PTO because there was also people who would have PTO balances that were like 200 hours and they wouldn't go anywhere. I was like, why? To me, that's when I realized it was important for me that I didn't just want to work. I wanted to work so I could also live. And, so that's like a huge principle in my life too. It's like, you have to live your life by doing things that you love and exploring, and adventure is one of those values that I really hold. And so traveling really feeds through that value, even if it's going, domestic travel within the US, just exploring outside of your bubble that you normally grew up in. That to me is what kept me motivated to just keep traveling and traveling.
I totally love your response there. Like how, well, first, like you said, you were starting to learn what other people's normals are and like other parts of the world. And I feel like that's so true because initially you might think, oh, that's weird, but like you think it's weird, but to them it's like, no, this is not weird. This is how we live.
They're all, you're weird.
You're weird, but then you start to like shift your mindset of being like, oh, like this is just another way of living, which is like, I agree too. That's what always excited me about travel as well, is like learning other normalcies and in other places. And then I also love how you said, you don't want to live to work, but you want to like work to live, And I think that's so important because especially here in the US, I feel like so many people have that mindset of like living to work. And like you said, like when they have time off, I've noticed that too, that people don't really go anywhere with that time off. They usually just kind of stay in the same place. Whereas when I lived abroad, people had time off. It's like, oh, where are we going? Where are we flying to?
Yeah.
It's different. So I just loved your answers with that. So you did that for a few years, but then you finally just hit like this wall and you were like, I really need to make a drastic change. So what happened that made you realize like, I actually want to leave my job and leave the US?
Yeah, it's so interesting because it's kind of like, we all went through that phase where we go to university, we study a career, and we're like, no, this is where I want to be. I want to climb the corporate ladder. I want to get to Nordstrom corporate. If they work in fashion, it sounds super, amazing. Then you finally get to like your goal and you're like, is this really what I was striving for? Because it got to the point where, like, don't get me wrong, I had a lot of great experiences at Nordstrom. Like, I learned a lot of things from the business side of retail. So it was interesting because I climbed all the way up from selling shoes on the sales floor. That was my first job. And then from there, I became a store admin. And then I went to corporate as a buying office assistant, so you kind of see all the different roles that everybody has. And, in my head, it was like, I wanted to be a buyer. Then I finally saw what the buyer did. And I was like, I don't think I want that job. I ended up in product development, which was cool because it was kind of just learning how products are actually made and like the business side of products and how, But after that job, I was like, is there any job here that I would really, really want? Like, would I want my manager's job? And I was like, no, she just looked like she was always stressed out. And I was like, I don't want her job. This person looks stressed out too. That person looks stressed out too. And I was like, I don't want this life. And so at this point already, I had always been a pretty big foodie, like post-college. And that was just something I did on the side. I would always love traveling, looking at where to eat different foods and just trying new food, cooking, all of that. And so that was just a big hobby of mine outside of work. And then obviously plant-based food became a huge part of my day when I decided to, quit eating meat and then start that whole plant-based transition. And so I was always, even when I did eat meat, I was always so health conscious. I was always excited about like, did you know that you can replace eggs using flaxseed? I would always like tell my mom this and my cousins and my friends. So, cause I was always so at home, I would always cook vegetarian or vegan. And then when I would go out, that's when I used to go eat meat. That's what, back when I didn't eat meat. And so I always had this fascination with nutrition and health and food and all of that. But I also like wanted to make it fun. And so I told myself, I was like, hey, Eunice, I want a career change. And then I was like, okay, I could just go to a different corporate office or just some other company, but I wanted to make it plant-based food focused. I wanted to actually work somewhere where I believed in the mission of what they were trying to do. I didn't want to just work in somebody else's dream. So I was like, okay, I can leave and just apply for another corporate job. But in the US, of course, you go to another company and they usually start you with a week of vacation, maybe 2 weeks if you're lucky. Or at least for me in Seattle, Amazon was just down the street. So I thought about that and I knew they didn't really give you any vacation starting off, at least not that much. And then a friend of mine, she told me, she's like, hey, and at this point I had already started Rated V. I was doing that in Seattle, filming a bunch of different vegan restaurants in Seattle. And a friend of mine told me, she was like, well, if you're kind of still thinking through of what you want to do, and since you really love to travel, she's like, I actually did this English teaching program in Spain. I'm applying this year. You should too. And you'll have plenty of time to work on your vlog and your channel and decide where you want to take it. And I was like, well, that's a brilliant idea, because I was like, well, I knew once you're in Europe, you can travel so cheap and really, it doesn't take you very long to travel to a different country. In an hour, you're in, France, or a couple hours, you're in Turkey. And so I was like, that sounds like a great idea. So I applied for the program, and it was a program that allowed me to work 15 hours a week, and they pay you a monthly stipend. And I had all this free time to do all the things that I loved. And I was like, if anything, I'm going to get paid to basically be on vacation. So that's how I decided to do it. To kind of that was my year of kind of like my time off to kind of process where I wanted my career to go next, but also kind of discover where my passions truly were and what I really wanted to do, and just also have fun while doing it. Right. So while I was in Europe, I was like, well, I'm in Europe. I want to see all the vegan food that all these other countries have to offer, and how it compares to the US and stuff. And so it's amazing how you can literally find vegan food everywhere now, like everywhere. Like even some countries where I was like, I don't think they're going to have anything here. And I would find it. I'd be like, oh, wow, this is actually really surprising.
Yeah, no, and that's what I've loved as well, because, when I first moved abroad, I was, vegetarian.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and I also first moved to Spain and did a program similar to you. And this was like 2014. And at the time, there really wasn't
Mm-hmm.
that many options in terms of going to restaurants, or if you went to the supermarket. I mean, you could find it, but not that many options, I mean, but in terms of kind of meat alternatives, but of course, if you stick to fruits and veggies and
Right.
plant-based stuff, it's pretty easy. But then, yeah, I eventually stopped. And it's so interesting because you first moved to Spain a few years later. When did you move to Spain? You moved there in...
I moved to Spain. It was September of 2019, so last year.
Yes. So because I went back to Spain for a month in January 2018. And by then, in those 4 years, in Barcelona, for me, what a drastic difference. There were so many more vegan restaurants, vegan options and everything. So by the time you went, like you said, there was just a huge amount of vegan options, which is amazing compared to the first time I went in 2014. So it's really great that it's been, growing in that sense, not just in Spain, but other parts of the world, which we'll get into more in a little bit. But I kind of want to ask you more about your Rated V food channel, because you said you started this at first in Seattle. So what inspired that idea to start a YouTube channel?
So yeah, so as I had mentioned before, I wasn't vegetarian anything about 3 years ago. And like what I mentioned, even when I did eat meat, I would eat vegetarian at home. So I was already kind of on the journey. So one time I watched the documentary, What the Health? And when I watched that documentary, I literally remember watching this being like, damn it. Because I knew exactly what I needed to do. And I was like, oh, I kind of always knew this, but now I'm watching all these different, stories and statistics and just discrimination, everything that goes into just supporting the meat industry. So I was like, no, I need to stop. I need to stop eating meat. It's not good for me. I'm just going to stop. But because I was such a huge foodie, I enjoyed watching, I don't know if you're familiar with the Fung Bros in LA.
No, I'm not.
So they're these two guys, they're two brothers who are Chinese, who actually are from the Seattle area. They grew up in Kent, I think. But they would literally just go around filming where they would eat food. And, they would go to all these different restaurants, talk about the food. And I would always watch them. And I loved it. And even when I became vegetarian, I would still watch them, or just other food and travel shows like Anthony Bourdain or Somebody Feed Phil. I would watch all of these shows. but I was like, I can't eat any of the food in these shows anymore. Like, I still have fun watching them, but I'm like, I can't eat any of this food. Like, I wouldn't go and order the same food if I went to the restaurant that they're at. And so I was like, why doesn't anybody have something like this for like vegan or vegetarian food? And I was like, well, you know what? Screw this. I'm going to try it. I'm in Seattle. We have tons of great vegan options here. I was like, I'm going to just go for it, And it's one of those things where I was like, I knew I didn't have all this equipment or anything, but I'm the kind of person who's like, if you don't start something and you overthink it, you're never going to do it. So for me, I was just like, I'm just going to do it, and I'll just work it out the more I go along with it. Right. And so that's how it started. I was just like, I wanted to provide that outlet for like escapism or just indulgent travel and food all in one for people who were plant-based. And so, to kind of excite them too, and I think, honestly, I was focusing it more toward people who weren't plant-based to kind of show them, hey, did you know, like, look at this amazing burger. Did you know it's actually vegan? And so a lot of my co-hosts that would come with me weren't even vegan. They'd be like, oh my gosh, like, this is delicious. I would have never known this was vegan, or I didn't know vegan food could taste this good. So yeah, that was like kind of the whole mission behind it. I wanted to excite people that plant-based food was really good. It also showed them around the city of Seattle, kind of like where you can find it, what it looks like. And then every time I would travel, let's say LA, I went to Smorgasburg, and that was my first like out of state video, I guess. And, so I've gone to like New Orleans and Oakland and stuff like that, just showing different foods that other people are making, telling the stories that restaurants have behind why they wanted to serve plant-based food. So yeah, that's what's been keeping me motivated to keep doing it, because I love hearing people's stories and just like why they decided to serve plant-based food, and showing people that it's also healthy and delicious and all of that.
And I can totally relate, because that's what I love doing with my Instagram page, is like you said, like showing people that like what vegan food can look like, or what it actually does look like. Because some people just, I don't know, sometimes when people think of what vegan food is, I'm like, do you know what food is in general? Like, I don't know. But anyways, I love that. And like you said, like you want to share stories, as to like the mission statement behind these people's businesses, and, why they're serving the food that they do, and also just what kind of foods that they do. And I love that you do bring people who aren't vegan, like as your co-host, because like you said, you want to like excite other people about vegan food as well. And then also, I can totally relate with like shows, because I've noticed that too. Like I love Anthony Bourdain as well, but like he wasn't showing vegan food. He was just showing like, the food, which I mean, that's part of the culture, but it's just like, yeah, like now there's a huge shift in the world. So it's just like, where are those kind of shows, for people, who are vegan? So I love what you're doing. And I love that you're not just doing it in the US, but you've taken it internationally as well. Because I saw that you also did an episode in Singapore even as well.
That was a lot of fun. I did Singapore because I was actually going for a salsa congress, like dancing salsa. I was like there for a few days by myself because none of my friends were coming until like a few days later. And I had found out about this app called A Billion Veg. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
I saw your Singapore video, so that's the only reason why I'm familiar now with it, but I wasn't before.
Yeah, so I had stumbled upon that. I was like, this is kind of cool. It's kind of like a Instagram meets like TripAdvisor kind of thing, where it shows you a picture of the dish first, and then you find out which restaurant it's from. And then I found out that the owner of it was actually based in Singapore. And I was like, I should ask see if they want to do like a collaboration, and they could show me around. Like, I want to get a local's perspective where the really good vegan food is at, right? Because I don't want to just go to, I knew street food was a big thing in Singapore. And I was like, I don't want to just go to restaurants. I want to go to the hawker centers. And that's the kind of stuff I knew I would probably only get from like locals' point of view too. So it was really nice because they're like, oh, we know all the spots. I know where we'll take you. And they were, it was kind of nice because they were just explaining to me how their app worked too. And that's how you could also find a lot of the places that they were showing me too. So it was fun. It was a lot of fun. And it showed me Singapore has so many vegan options, so many, because they're so diverse and so like, there's so many different cultures too. So it's not uncommon to find vegan food in Singapore. And so that's what, as an outsider, you would think, oh, it might be difficult because all you see is they eat a lot of meat and there's a lot of meat everywhere and just, there's not going to be anything vegan. But no, it's totally not true. I mean, sure, there is a lot of meat, but I mean, there's a lot of vegan food too. You just have to like kind of know where to look.
Exactly. Because I also got to go to Singapore, and my friend and I, we were able to find plenty of vegan restaurants and like vegan options. But like you said, you have to actively be searching for it, because if you're not, then you would just easily overlook it and think that, oh, there's like no vegan food. But there was, I just kind of want to ask you this, because the one time I did have difficulty finding vegan food was the one terminal that I was in at the airport leaving Singapore. So I'm just kind of curious how it was for you, because me and my friend literally walked around the whole terminal. I don't remember which terminal it was, and we couldn't find vegan food for the life of us. I did eventually find like a vegetarian, like a veggie pad thai, but it took a while to finally find it. So I just kind of want to know how it was for you if you ate it all at the airport, because Singapore itself, like you said, loads of options, but then it was just a bit more difficult for some reason for us at the airport.
Oh my gosh, the airport. Well, that was a different experience for me because when I first arrived at the airport, the first time it was at like 1 a.m. or something, and then nothing was open, so I like chilled there until I had to leave. But I had a different experience because I have lounge passes. I have a card that has lounge passes, so I went to the lounges and just would eat my food there. And they didn't have a lot of vegan options either, just a few. But when I went, I had gotten there so early, none of the restaurants were actually open. And then when I left, it was the same deal. I got there first thing in the morning, and then I didn't really have time to even check out the restaurants, and I think they were still closed too. So
oh, gotcha.
So I didn't actually. So I just went to the lounge, and they had options there, which honestly, if you're a hardcore traveler, I recommend getting a credit card that gives you a lounge pass, like the priority pass, because some of the stuff that they have in there it's pretty good. I mean, some are better than others, but there's some, especially at the international terminals, that's where you get the good stuff. And they'll have like noodles, then they'll label out what options are vegan and what's vegetarian and everything, because they know that there's a lot of travelers in there and they all have their different diet restrictions. So
so there you go. Travel tip right there. Get a credit card that gives you access to like lounges and stuff.
Or even that, like you can even buy, even if you don't have a travel credit card, you can buy the priority passes separately. I think it's like $100 for the whole year or something like that, which if you're going to travel, that's totally worth it.
Oh, yeah. No, I agree. I actually didn't know about that, buying the priority pass separately. So there's another travel tip right there. I know traveling's not a big thing right now, but in the future, something worth like investing in. But
totally.
But I love, like I said, that you're just like showcasing this in different parts of the world. So like, what is like your goal? Like, what do you foresee like rated V food? Like, and I know you're going to go back to Spain soon, right? You're going back next month.
Yeah. So I'm hoping everything will work out, because there's, this whole COVID thing, it's paperwork and offices, everything's closed. And so it's just a matter of like getting it all squared out. But I guess I want to kind of move it toward being almost like a fun and journalistic type of approach, where kind of how like Miami Nice video, I really liked editing that video. It was so much fun because I was telling the story of the owner, but I was also presenting her food, especially if it's Cuban food, which is not very popular in the Pacific Northwest. Like you go to Miami, you can see it everywhere, but here, like it's almost like nobody can find it anywhere. And, and especially if I involve more travel, like if I'm able to travel more now that I'm back in Spain and Europe, I want to do more of that, where I it might be a mix of just also vlogging and taking you on my adventures of like, okay, here's like, I just went to Istanbul. Here's all the places that you can eat in Istanbul. Or just focus on just one restaurant, be like, okay, if you're going to pick one place to go to, you need to come to this place. This is their story, And so it's kind of like a mix between journalism, but also like a Somebody Feed Phil. Like, I don't know if you've seen Somebody Feed Phil.
I've heard of it. Yes, I've heard of a show. I haven't seen it though.
He does like I really enjoy watching his videos because it's on Netflix. So it's like, he usually brings people along with him and he has them tell their story sometime of like what they did or for behind the restaurant, but also he's such a silly and fun person that when he's tasting the food, you can kind of feel like you're like, oh my gosh, I wish I could try that food. You know what I mean? So I guess that's kind of where I want to take it. I do want to merge travel and food together. That's the goal, because those are the two of my favorite things and two of the things that I think people can really learn about different cultures. Even if you're not traveling, you could learn a lot about people's culture just through food and connecting with people. It's one of the best and easiest ways to connect with people is through food.
I mean, that's how we reconnected was through food on social media.
Yeah, it's so amazing how or like restaurants, you'll be sitting down and sometimes you'll end up talking to somebody next to you and they'll be talking about, oh, I went here and here and here. So it's just really cool. It's a really good way to bring people together is through food. So
it is. It is. And that's what I've been loving about Portland lately is that even though I can't travel and there's been so many trips that were supposed to happen this year that just keep not happening.
Oh, I know.
But I've been loving traveling around Portland through food. And I enjoy seeing that so many different cuisines are offering and making vegan food,
Yes.
plant-based Israeli food, vegan, Iraqi food, Mexico City, street food, that's vegan. I love seeing that the transition that people are making and taking these very traditional, old dishes, but reinventing them in a vegan way.
Mm-hmm.
And I love seeing that here. And that's what I enjoy about your show is that seeing that those things, not just here in Portland or in the Pacific Northwest, but also around the world. Because for me, since I lived abroad for a few years and I moved from one country to another, I have been seeing this transition over the years. And I feel like it's so important that more people take note of this because I don't know about you, but I get asked a lot oh, how was it being vegan abroad and traveling? That must have been really difficult. And it's it's really not. Like I said, the movement is happening. And like you said, if you really look for it, you can find these vegan options and it doesn't have to be restricted to one kind of cuisine or one part of the world. You can really find it anywhere.
Yeah. And that's one thing too. That's because when I go traveling, I like to look up traditional food that's from that country anyways, finding out the food and then searching the vegan options. Like for example, when I went to Portugal, to Porto, I looked up popular or traditional food in Porto and I found out about the Francesinha. Now the Francesinha traditionally is super meat heavy and there's cheese and everything, but then there was so many places. When I put in Francesinha vegan, I found out there were so many places that were doing it vegan. And that probably would have never been something I knew about if I had just typed in vegan food Porto, because some of these places, they'll have the veggie burgers or they'll have different buffets, but they don't have the popular traditional food from that city that people are used to eating. And that's how I ended up. Instagram is such a good way to find out these dishes because people are going to be posting. Locals are usually posting what they're eating, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I really like that. And then also for example, one place that I thought I was going to have a lot of difficulty. Well, it was kind of difficult, but also not really. Was to find vegan food was when I went to Oaxaca.
Yes.
Yes. And so, because I knew, I was like, man, I know they're going to have a lot of meat there, but I was like, you know what? But I mean, being Latina, I was like, I don't care. Rice, I would just give me beans and aguacate and everything. I'll be fine. And so, but it was funny because they actually had a lot of options for me. They eat a lot of squash blossoms.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
They obviously have a lot of beans. The salsas are usually really good. They had avocados everywhere, mushrooms. So sometimes it was funny because I would be like, oh, I don't, I'm vegetarian or I'm vegan. I don't eat meat. And so they would offer me fish. And I was like, no, I don't eat that either. And so, sometimes it's just a process of explaining to them what you do eat, and then they'll happily make you something. So I'd be like, oh, can you make me tacos made of just mushrooms and no cheese, please? And they'd be like, oh, okay. So that's what they would make for you. And so it's pretty easy. Even if they say, no, we don't have anything, you can usually pick off a menu, see what else they have on the menu, and kind of make your own thing. And usually they're very happy to make you something. So it's, a part of just not being afraid to do that either.
Yeah. And then it becomes kind of like a learning experience for them as well, being like, oh, when they say they're vegan, these are the things that they actually don't eat.
Yeah.
And so, because that happened to me a few times in Oaxaca as
Mm-hmm.
well, where I was also surprised that there was a lot of vegan options actually, because I was there this last February. But then I went to a local market and they did have some vegan options. But the one stand that I chose, because they had the mole, which I really wanted,
Mm-hmm.
It was served with cheese or with meat. But then of course I just had to ask them. I was like, oh, can you actually make it without? And like with your experience, they were like more than happy to do it. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the nice thing about with traveling as well. They're so willing to accommodate most of the time,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, you are a customer and they do want to make you happy. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, could you just not put this in, and they'll happily do it. And I love the trick that you did, that you said about like first Googling like traditional dishes, because I do the same thing when I travel. It's like, okay, what dishes do I need to have that I need to have? But now being vegan, it's like, okay, that's the first step. But then step 2 is finding the vegan version. And it's nice, like with you, what happened with you in Portugal is that people are making the vegan version of these like iconic dishes, so then it's like, okay, great. You can go to the country, not just experience the culture, but you can experience the food, but like in a vegan way. So it's like a win-win.
Yeah, it just makes your experience just that much better, right? Because it's like, imagine going to like, let's say Japan, knowing you can't eat sushi, but then you're not even going to have vegan sushi or vegan ramen, and it's there. You know what I mean? Like, you're like, why are you going to go over there and have veggie burgers? You can have that back home. Like, don't.
Exactly.
You need to participate in the local food somehow. As someone's making it, you just have to look for it.
Exactly. And then also too, like kind of tying in with what happened with you in Portugal, like for me in Argentina. So like the famous dish there, or like at the street food, it's called like the milanesa.
Uh-huh.
It's like a thin meat, like pounded down, very thin, and then breaded and then fried. It's like really, and then it's served like in between bread, so it's like so
super
not
healthy.
that's super healthy, right? But when I
Yeah.
got there, I learned that you could actually buy like vegan versions
no
of it. Like there were
way.
versions of it that you can buy in the freezer made with vegetables. And I was like, yes, I can have a local dish. It's very like, iconic in Argentina, but I can have it like vegan. And so, but instead of eating it with bread, I would have it with a side salad or something. But you could, of course, still have it with bread. But like you said, it's just like it's exciting that I can still partake, being part of the food culture. And it just goes to show that so many countries, they really are evolving as well into eating less meat, even a country like Argentina, which is everyone knows them for their steaks, So it's just like it's happening. And that's why I love what you're doing, because you're showing people that like this is happening around the world. You can eat vegan. It's really not that hard. And people are still honoring their culture and their heritage with their food, but just making it vegan.
Yeah, because it was actually when I went to Valencia, because that's where I was living when I went to Spain. And I remember being so surprised of how many options they had there, because Valencia is the 3rd largest city in Spain. And I had actually gone to Valencia a couple years back, like 3 years before I was even vegetarian. So I remember thinking, it was so funny because I literally remember saying this to my cousin, like, oh my gosh, it would suck being vegan here. There's like no options. 3 years later, I'm moving there and I'm just discovering all these like amazing vegan options. And I was like, oh wow, it's not as bad as I thought it was. But also it was like a new thing trending in that city. Like it has been recent within the last 5 years. It's been like just booming with vegan options. So that's like your experience when you went back to Barcelona. They had plenty of options there.
Exactly. And so that's where you're going back to. You're going back to Valencia specifically
Yes.
again. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really excited to see more about like food in Valencia and food in other parts of Europe, since like, traveling is definitely more of a thing over there in that part of the world.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm so excited for like what's to come, like for you. But I guess, for people that kind of want to follow like in your footsteps, like travel, move abroad, or just pursuing something that they're passionate about. I mean, like what advice would you give to that person?
I think I would say, going back to like, make sure you pursue something you're actually passionate about or care about, and think to yourself, this is something that I've been thinking too, is like, how is this contributing to helping other people? Like, I want to do something that also gives back in some type of way. And so everybody always wants to have a career or something, but I have gotten to the point where I want a career where I feel like I love what I'm doing so much, or that I believe so much in the work that I'm doing, that it doesn't feel like work to me. So that's kind of just been my journey and discovery too. And also making sure to have like, not to be, if you have an idea, to not to be afraid to start something. it's better to start and fail than to always wonder, oh, maybe I should have done that. That's always been my motto. Like, go for it 100%. If you have an idea, just try it. Just try it. Like, that's the only way you ever know if it's going to work or not. And regardless, you're going to learn so many skills along the way. Like, let's say even though this whole Rated V thing never takes off, for example, I learned how to edit videos. I probably would have never even learned how to edit videos if I had never started to begin with, So that's a skill that I can now take, put on my resume and be like, and go somewhere else and be like, oh yeah, I know how to edit videos. I know how to use a camera. I know how to use this, And so you end up picking up new skills that can advance you to your next step, even if the first idea doesn't work, if that makes any sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. And I 100% agree that, it's better to go for something. And if it doesn't work out, you still learn something, you still gain something from the experience, and that will still take you towards wherever, you're meant to go to in life. So I love your words and I love your positivity. And I'm so excited to work with you even more because
I know you do.
Yeah, we have our own little project that we're doing together. Yes. And I'm super excited about it. So if you haven't subscribed to her YouTube channel yet, it's Rated V Food, find it, subscribe. It's awesome. And then also, how can people also connect with you and find you? Where else on social media?
So Instagram is @RatedVFood, all one word. And then on YouTube, it's just youtube.com/RatedV. And they can also reach me through email through ratedvfood@gmail.com.
Okay, perfect. Yes. Give her a follow. She just has so much positivity and her just passion for food. It's just, I can relate to it. So I get excited watching you. So thank you so much, Eunice. This was so much fun. And I definitely am excited to work more together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun too.
For more information on travel and life abroad, go to Venture-Ette.com. If you enjoyed this episode, let me know by leaving a review. And be sure to follow me at Venture-Ette on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Safe travels, and until next time.